Let's get right into it. Number 8. JFK, charm, cheating, and covert chaos. John F. Kennedy, the man who made politics glamorous and the White House feel like a Hollywood movie set. He had the charm, the hair, the speeches, and a moral compass spinning like a drunk ceiling fan. Let's start with the affairs. JFK wasn't just a ladies' man, he was a one-man marital apocalypse. Marilyn Monroe was just the celebrity tip of the iceberg. He allegedly had trysts with White House staff, spies, mob girlfriends, and possibly people who didn't even know they were being seduced until it was over. He was a walking HR violation. Behind the scenes, JFK approved some very questionable operations, like the Bay of Pigs, which was basically America's attempt to sneak into Cuba and hope no one noticed. Spoiler, they noticed. It failed spectacularly. He also supported the use of chemical weapons in Vietnam and ramped up covert operations in Latin America, laying the groundwork for decades of chaos. Yes, he gave great speeches about hope and freedom, but he also played Cold War chess with real human lives, lied about his health constantly, and used charisma to cover up a mess of scandals. History remembers him as a golden boy, but if you dig just a little, it's more like smooth-talking chaos with a presidential seal. Number 7. Che Guevara, the T-shirt tyrant. If you've ever seen a college freshman in a Che Guevara shirt and thought, that guy seems rebellious, you're halfway to understanding how propaganda works. Che's face is iconic, but his resume, that's a whole different mood. Che Guevara was a Marxist revolutionary, doctor, and war hero, depending on which side of history you're reading from. But he was also a violent ideologue who helped build Cuba's police state and personally oversaw executions of political dissidents. You know, minor stuff. He believed in violent revolution, hated capitalism, and had no problem imprisoning or shooting people for things like listening to the wrong music or having the wrong opinion. The man ran firing squads, celebrated martyrdom, and once said, "A revolutionary must become a cold killing machine." That's a direct quote. Not exactly coffee mug material. And despite being against imperialism, he wasn't much for democracy either. Che's idea of liberation came with a side order of fear, censorship, and forced labor camps. So while his face got turned into a symbol of rebellion and freedom, his actual politics were closer to obey or die. Great for posters, terrible for human rights. Number 6. Abraham Lincoln, free-ish at last. Honest Abe, the tall, hat-wearing, log cabin-born vampire slayer, if you watched that one movie and believed everything in it. He's praised for freeing the slaves, preserving the Union, and writing speeches so poetic they make grown adults tear up over parchment. But here's what history class skipped. Lincoln wasn't exactly passionate about ending slavery. He was more reluctantly okay with it under the right circumstances. His real goal? Keeping the Union together. In fact, Lincoln openly stated that if he could save the Union without freeing a single slave, he would do it. The Emancipation Proclamation? More of a war tactic than a moral epiphany. It didn't even free all the slaves, just the ones in the Confederate States, where the North had zero control. Also, he supported colonization for freed black people. As in, thanks for surviving slavery, now please leave the country. He literally proposed sending them to Central America. So, not exactly a post-racial utopia. Lincoln was a political genius, and yes, his actions paved the way for eventual abolition. But the guy wasn't marching with a Black Lives Matter sign. He was calculating, pragmatic, and just barely progressive enough for the 1860s. Bottom line, he freed the slaves like someone deleting a suspicious file off their hard drive. Effective, but not because of deep moral clarity. Number 5. Mahatma Gandhi, passive-aggressive extremist. Now, hold on. Gandhi? Really? The walking symbol of peace and resistance? The guy who turned fasting into a protest weapon and had the fashion sense of a literal bedsheet? Yes, that one. Look, Gandhi did do a lot of good. He led a non-violent independence movement and inspired civil rights around the world. But his personal life and views? Yikes. They were more complicated than a soap opera written by Freud. For starters, Gandhi had some very strange habits, like sleeping naked next to teenage girls to test his willpower, which raises about 500 red flags. He also believed in extreme self-denial, like weirdly obsessed with bowel movements and purity levels of body fluids. Yes, that's real. And let's not ignore the racism. Early in his life, Gandhi referred to black South Africans as savages and didn't believe they should have the same rights as Indians under British rule. He eventually shifted those views, but only after, a while. He also opposed industrialization, women's sexual autonomy, and once suggested that Jews should meet the Holocaust with soul force instead of fighting back, as in, die peacefully. Thanks, Gandhi. So yes, he taught the world about nonviolent resistance, but he also left behind a trail of problematic beliefs that most people conveniently forget. Peace icon? Yes. Saint? Not quite. Number 4. Mother Teresa. Saint or suffering enthusiast? Ah yes, the most controversial entry your brain will immediately want to reject. Mother Teresa. The sweet old nun, the literal saint, the symbol of selfless compassion. Except, not entirely. While she did dedicate her life to helping the poor, her idea of helping was often just watching them suffer. Her clinics were underfunded, under-equipped, and intentionally kept that way. Not out of necessity, but out of ideology. She believed that suffering brought people closer to Christ. So comfort and pain relief weren't exactly high on her to-do list. Patients frequently went without proper medication, hygiene, or dignity. And when people donated millions to improve the facilities, that money often vanished into the mysterious vaults of the Vatican, or off to build more homes for the dying that prioritized spiritual suffering over actual care. Also, fun fact, when she got sick, she didn't go to her own clinics. She went to a fancy Western hospital, because of course she did. So while she smiled in photos and spoke of love, her real legacy is a complicated tangle of pain, poverty, and some pretty twisted theology. Stop. It's not that she didn't help people. It's just that her version of help came with a whole lot of unnecessary agony. Number 3. Winston Churchill, Empire's favorite bulldog. Winston Churchill, the icon of British resistance, the never-surrender guy, the human version of a stubborn bulldog in a trench coat. Look, he was great at speeches. The kind of guy who could yell, "We shall fight on the beaches," and make you want to body slam a Nazi tank with your teacup. But peel back the wartime posters and it gets darker. Churchill wasn't just defending Britain, he was also defending the British Empire. You know, the thing that colonized, looted, and oppressed about a quarter of the planet. He openly believed in racial superiority, casually let millions of Indians starve during the Bengal famine of 1943, and blamed it on them being lazy, and called Gandhi a half-naked fakir for suggesting peace. His policies and views would be considered cartoonishly evil today, but back then, par for the colonial course. So yeah, Churchill rallied the West against Hitler, but he also thought white imperialism was a gift to the world. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Basically, history gave him a cigar and a top hat, but forgot to mention he was chain-smoking on a pile of human rights violations. Number 2. Thomas Edison, patent troll supreme. Everyone loves a good inventor story. Man in a dusty lab, scribbling genius ideas on napkins, lighting up the world with raw brilliance. Except sometimes, that man is Thomas Edison, and the lab is actually someone else's brain. While Edison did invent a lot, what he really mastered was the art of taking credit for other people's work. His most famous rival? Nikola Tesla, a guy who, let's be honest, should have had the electric car and the theme park named after him. Edison was basically the original tech bro, complete with shady tactics. When Tesla introduced alternating current, a safer, more efficient way to deliver electricity, Edison launched a smear campaign so intense he electrocuted animals in public to scare people away from it. Cute, right? Just a casual PR campaign featuring electrocution. For the kids. He also stole patents, underpaid staff, and once filmed an elephant being electrocuted. Again. Why? Was there any problem this man didn't try to solve with electricity and a total disregard for ethics? So while he gets credit for bringing light to the world, it was more like he flipped the switch on other people's work and then sent them the electric bill. Number 1. Christopher Columbus, the lost and found psychopath. Let's start with the guy whose name you probably memorized in 2nd grade like it was the password to adulthood. Christopher Columbus. The man, the myth, the master of getting very lost and pretending it was intentional. We were told Columbus discovered America like it was a sock behind the couch. The reality? He crashed into the Bahamas thinking it was India, never admitted his mistake, and then proceeded to enslave, mutilate, and massacre the native populations like he was auditioning for history's worst cruise director. Here's the fun part. Not only did he kick off centuries of colonization and genocide, but he was also a truly bad governor. Like mutiny-level bad. His own crew turned on him. Imagine messing up so badly at work that your coworkers begged to send you back to Spain in chains. And Spain was like, yeah, fair. And yet for decades he had statues, holidays, and parades. But if you look under the powdered wig of historical revisionism, Columbus was less brave explorer and more chaotic GPS failure with violent tendencies. Basically, he was the guy who asked for directions, ignored them, crashed the car into someone's house, and then demanded they give him a medal for it. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.